The helicopter blades cut through the desert air like angry wasps as the medical evacuation team rushed toward the remote outpost. Dr. Sarah Chen gripped her medical bag tighter, her knuckles white against the green canvas. She had been a combat medic for 3 years, but something about this mission felt different. The radio chatter was more urgent, more desperate than usual. 2 minutes out, the pilot shouted over the noise. Sarah could see the small military base below, smoke rising from what looked like a bombed-out building. Her heart raced as she mentally prepared for whatever waited for her on the ground. The helicopter touched down in a cloud of dust and debris. Sarah jumped out before the aircraft fully settled, her medical training taking over. She ran toward a group of soldiers gathered around what appeared to be casualties lying on stretchers. The base commander, Colonel Martinez, met her halfway. "Doc, we've got 3 wounded. 2 are stable, but the third?" He paused, his face grim. "She's been unconscious for 20 minutes. Won't respond to anything." Sarah followed him to where a female soldier lay motionless on a stretcher. The woman appeared to be in her late 20s with short brown hair matted with blood and dust. Her uniform was torn and dirty, but what caught Sarah's attention immediately was how still she was. Not the stillness of unconsciousness, but something else entirely. "What happened here?" Sarah asked as she knelt beside the stretcher, pulling out her stethoscope. "IED explosion about an hour ago," explained Sergeant Williams, one of the Navy SEALs who had been part of the rescue operation. "We found her pinned under some debris. She was conscious when we pulled her out, talking normally, even helped us move some of the rubble. Then suddenly she just shut down." Sarah began her examination, checking vital signs and looking for obvious injuries. The woman's pulse was steady but elevated, her breathing shallow but regular. There were cuts and bruises, but nothing that should cause unconsciousness. As Sarah lifted the woman's eyelid to check her pupils, something unexpected happened. The woman's hand shot up like lightning, grabbing Sarah's wrist in a grip so tight it made her gasp. For just a second, the woman's eyes opened wide, alert and filled with something Sarah had seen before in combat veterans. A wild, dangerous awareness that came from too much time in war zones. "Where am I?" the woman whispered, her voice hoarse but controlled. "You're safe," Sarah said gently, trying to keep her voice calm despite the crushing grip on her wrist. "I'm Dr. Chen. You were in an explosion, but you're going to be okay." The woman's eyes darted around, taking in the faces of the SEALs and other soldiers surrounding her. Sarah watched as something changed in her expression. Recognition, followed immediately by what looked like panic. "No," the woman said, releasing Sarah's wrist and trying to sit up. "No, I need to go. I can't be here." "Hey, easy there," Sergeant Williams said, moving closer. "You're hurt. The doc needs to check you out." But the woman was already swinging her legs off the stretcher, moving with a fluid grace that surprised everyone watching. Despite her injuries, despite having been unconscious moments before, she moved like a trained soldier, like someone who had done this many times before. "Ma'am, please," Sarah said, reaching out to steady her. "You could have internal injuries. You need medical attention." The woman turned to look at Sarah, and for a moment their eyes met. Sarah saw something in those dark brown eyes that made her pause. It wasn't confusion or fear like she usually saw in injured soldiers. It was calculation, assessment, the look of someone evaluating threats and escape routes. "I'm fine," the woman said, though Sarah could see her favoring her left leg, and the way she held her ribs suggested possible fractures. "Thank you for your help, but I need to leave." Colonel Martinez stepped forward. "I'm sorry, but that's not possible. You were found in a restricted area after an attack. We need to know who you are and what you are doing here." Sarah watched the woman's face carefully. Most civilians would be confused, frightened, demanding to call family or lawyers. Most soldiers would be following protocol, providing name, rank, and serial number. But this woman did neither. She simply stood there, silent, her expression carefully blank. "What's your name?" the colonel asked. Silence. "Are you military? Civilian contractor?" More silence. Sarah had seen this before, but never in someone who appeared to be just another soldier. This was the silence of someone trained to resist interrogation, the silence of someone with secrets worth protecting. Sergeant Williams exchanged glances with his team members. These were Navy SEALs, men who had seen action all over the world, who prided themselves on their ability to read people and situations. But this woman was making them all uncomfortable in a way they couldn't quite explain. "Look," Williams said, trying a different approach. "We're all on the same side here. We just want to help you. The woman's eyes flicked to him, then to each of the other SEALs in turn. Sarah watched, fascinated as she seemed to catalog each man's position, weapons, and possible threat level. It was subtle but unmistakable once you knew what to look for. "I appreciate what you've done," the woman said finally, "but I really do need to go." "That's not happening," Colonel Martinez said firmly. "Not until we know who you are." The tension in the air was thick enough to cut. Sarah could see the other soldiers shifting uncomfortably, hands unconsciously moving closer to their weapons. Whatever was happening here, it was escalating quickly. Sarah made a decision. "Everyone step back," she said quietly. "Give her some space." The colonel looked at her in surprise. "Doctor, this is a security matter." "And this is a medical situation," Sarah replied, not taking her eyes off the injured woman. "She's been through trauma. Crowding her isn't going to help anyone." Reluctantly, the soldiers took a few steps back. Sarah moved closer to the woman, speaking in the gentle tone she used with all her patience. "What's your name?" she asked softly. The woman looked at her for a long moment, and Sarah thought she saw something soften in her expression. But then the mask slipped back into place. "I can't tell you that," she said simply. And in that moment, Sarah knew they weren't dealing with an ordinary soldier at all. The medical tent buzzed with quiet tension as Sarah continued her examination of the mysterious woman. Colonel Martinez had reluctantly agreed to move the questioning inside, away from the curious eyes of other soldiers. But his patience was wearing thin. The woman sat on the examination table, allowing Sarah to clean her wounds but maintaining her stubborn silence about everything else. "These cuts are deep," Sarah murmured, carefully cleaning a gash on the woman's forehead. "You're going to need stitches." She paused, studying the woman's face. "You know, most people would be asking about their injuries, wanting to know how bad they are." The woman met her eyes but said nothing. Sarah had dealt with uncooperative patients before, but this was different. The woman wasn't hostile or frightened. She was simply absent, as if she had pulled some invisible shield around herself that kept the world at bay. "Your ribs are probably cracked," Sarah continued, gently probing the woman's side. "And your left ankle is definitely sprained. You shouldn't be walking on it, let alone trying to leave." "I've had worse," the woman said quietly, speaking for the first time in 20 minutes. "I'm sure you have," Sarah replied, and something in her tone made the woman look at her sharply. Outside the tent, Sarah could hear the SEALs talking in low voices. Sergeant Williams and his team had been trying to piece together what had happened at the explosion site, but they kept coming back to the same questions. Who was this woman? What had she been doing in a restricted military zone? And why did everything about her scream special operations training? "The way she moved when she grabbed you," Williams had told Sarah earlier. "That wasn't luck or adrenaline. That was training, serious training." Now, as Sarah worked, she found herself studying the woman's hands. They were calloused in specific places, the kind of calluses that came from weapons training and rope work. Her muscle tone, visible despite her injuries, spoke of someone who maintained peak physical condition, and there were scars, old ones that told stories of previous violence. "You're military," Sarah said. It wasn't a question. The woman's eyes flicked to her, but she remained silent. "Special forces," Sarah continued, cleaning another wound. "The question is whose?" For the first time, the woman's carefully controlled expression showed a crack of surprise. Colonel Martinez chose that moment to enter the tent, followed by Sergeant Williams. "Any progress, Doctor?" "Medically, yes," Sarah replied. 3 stitches in her forehead, wrapped ribs, and her ankle needs to be immobilized. But she's stable. And identification? Sarah glanced at the woman, who was watching the exchange with those calculating eyes. "That's not my department, Colonel." Williams stepped forward, his demeanor more respectful than before. "Ma'am, we ran the prints from the water bottle you touched. They're not in any system we have access to." The woman's expression didn't change, but Sarah noticed her shoulders tense slightly. "That's unusual," the colonel said slowly. "Military personnel, government contractors, even most civilian employees who work in secure areas, they're all in the system somewhere." "Maybe she's not American," Williams suggested. "Her English is perfect." "No accent," Martinez replied. "And something about her?" He trailed off, studying the woman's face. "You look familiar. Have we met before?" The woman's silence stretched on, but Sarah was watching her carefully. There was something there, some flicker of recognition when the colonel spoke. These men knew each other somehow, I think, Sarah said carefully. That we might be approaching this wrong. Everyone turned to look at her. What do you mean? Martinez asked. Sarah set down her medical supplies and faced the group. You're treating her like a potential enemy or security threat. But look at the evidence. She was found in an area that had just been attacked. She helped with the rescue efforts before losing consciousness. She's clearly military trained, but she's not hostile. She won't even tell us her name, Williams pointed out. No, Sarah agreed. She won't. But there are reasons why a soldier might not be able to identify themselves. Classified missions, deep cover operations, witness protection. The tent fell silent as everyone absorbed this. The woman was watching Sarah with an expression that might have been gratitude. You think she's one of ours? Martinez asked quietly. I think, Sarah said, that if she is who I think she might be, then asking her to break cover could put a lot of people in danger. William stepped closer to the woman, his posture less threatening now. If you're military, if you're one of ours, then help us out here. Give us something to work with. The woman looked at each of them in turn, and Sarah could practically see her weighing options, calculating risks. Finally, she spoke. The explosion wasn't random, she said quietly. You were targeted. The temperature in the tent seemed to drop 10 degrees. What do you mean? Martinez demanded. The IED wasn't placed to take out infrastructure or cause maximum casualties. It was positioned to draw a specific response team to a specific location. Williams exchanged glances with his team members. How do you know that? Because I've seen the pattern before. The woman winced as she shifted position, her injuries clearly causing pain. Someone knew you would come. They knew your protocols, your response times, your routes. That's impossible, Martinez said. The attack location was classified until after it happened. Was it? The woman asked. Or did someone with access to your communications want you to think it was classified? Sarah watched the soldiers' faces as the implications sank in. If the woman was right, then someone with high-level security clearance had set up the entire operation. Someone had wanted these specific SEALs in this specific location. Why should we believe you? Williams asked, though his tone suggested he was starting to. The woman was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached into her torn uniform and pulled out something that made everyone in the tent freeze. It was a small metal coin about the size of a quarter, with symbols that Sarah didn't recognize but the soldiers clearly did. Sergeant Williams' face went pale. Where did you get that? It was left at the explosion site, the woman said. Hidden under the debris where you found me. Someone wanted it to be found, but only by someone who would know what it meant. Martinez took the coin from her with shaking hands. This is impossible. These haven't been used in over 5 years. What is it? Sarah asked. Williams answered without taking his eyes off the coin. It's a challenge coin from a unit that officially doesn't exist anymore. A unit that was disbanded after a mission went wrong in Syria. What kind of mission? Sarah pressed. The soldiers exchanged looks, clearly debating how much to say in front of a civilian. The kind where everyone involved was supposed to disappear afterward. The woman said quietly. The kind where the only people who should have these coins are either dead or very good at staying hidden. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. And you're saying someone from this disbanded unit is here? Targeting you? I'm saying, the woman replied, that someone who knows about that unit, someone who has access to their materials, is playing a very dangerous game. And you just walked right into it. The implications were staggering. If she was right, then the rescue mission had been a trap from the beginning. And if that was true, then everyone in this tent was in more danger than they realized. The base went into lockdown within minutes of the woman's revelation. Sarah watched through the tent flap as soldiers moved with urgent purpose, securing perimeters and checking communications equipment. The mysterious coin had changed everything, transforming a simple medical evacuation into a potential counterintelligence operation. Colonel Martinez paced the small space, his radio crackling with reports from security teams. Nothing, he muttered after another check-in. No unauthorized personnel, no breach of the perimeter, no suspicious communications. The woman sat quietly on the examination table, watching the activity with those sharp eyes. Sarah noticed she seemed less tense now, as if revealing the coin had lifted some invisible burden from her shoulders. You're not surprised by any of this, Sarah observed, continuing to tend to the woman's injuries. No, the woman admitted. I've been expecting something like this for a while now. Sergeant Williams looked up from where he'd been studying tactical maps with his team. Expecting it? You knew this was going to happen? Not specifically this, the woman replied. But I knew someone was hunting survivors from Operation Blackwater. The tent fell silent. Sarah had never heard of Operation Blackwater, but the soldiers' reactions told her it was significant. That operation is classified beyond top secret, Martinez said slowly. How do you know that name? The woman met his gaze steadily. Because I was there. Williams dropped the map he'd been holding. That's impossible. Everyone from Blackwater is either dead or what? The woman asked quietly. Or they were reassigned to deep cover positions so classified that their own families think they're dead. Williams finished, his voice barely above a whisper. Sarah felt the pieces of the puzzle clicking into place. You're not hiding because you're a deserter or a criminal. You're hiding because you're supposed to be dead. The woman nodded slowly. My name is Lieutenant Commander Alex Rivera. I was KIA in Syria 3 years ago, according to official records. The weight of that statement settled over the tent like a heavy blanket. Sarah had heard rumors of such operations, soldiers who disappeared into the shadows to do work so dangerous and classified that the government couldn't acknowledge their existence. The question is, Rivera continued, how did someone get hold of Blackwater Challenge coins? There were only 12 of us, and according to official records, we're all dead. Martinez was studying the coin again, turning it over in his hands. Could someone have found them at the battle site? No, Rivera said firmly. We destroyed everything before the extraction. These coins were distributed after the mission, during debriefing. Anyone who has one was in that debriefing room. Williams's face was grim, which means either someone from your unit survived and went rogue, or someone very high up in the command structure is playing both sides, Rivera finished. Sarah found herself drawn into the mystery despite herself. How many people would have known about the coins? The 12 team members, the mission commander, the intelligence liaison, and maybe 3 people in Washington, Rivera replied. That's it. And how many of the team members are really dead? Sarah asked. Rivera was quiet for a long moment. 6 confirmed KIA during the mission. 3 more died in the extraction. That leaves 3 of us who made it out. Including you, Martinez said. Including me. Williams leaned forward. Do you know where the other 2 are? Rivera shook her head. That's the point of deep cover. We don't know about each other. Safer that way. But Sarah caught something in her expression, a flicker of uncertainty. You do know something, she said. Rivera looked at her and Sarah saw the internal struggle playing out. These were secrets that had been kept for years, truths that could get people killed. 2 months ago, Rivera said finally, I got a message. A single word sent through channels I thought only one other person knew about. It said compromised, meaning someone was hunting Blackwater survivors, meaning it wasn't safe to stay hidden anymore. Martinez set the coin down on the medical tray with a metallic clink. And you think today's attack was connected? I know it was. The timing, the location, the precision of the intelligence required to set up your team, it has all the hallmarks of someone with Blackwater training. Williams studied her face. You think one of your teammates went rogue? I think one of my teammates might not have had a choice, Rivera replied quietly. Sarah finished cleaning the last of Rivera's wounds, her mind racing. What do you mean? Blackwater was a deep penetration mission. We spent 8 months undercover with terrorist cells, gathering intelligence. It changes you, that kind of work. Some people come back different. Different how? Martinez asked. Rivera was quiet for a moment, staring at her hands. You start to question which side you're really on. When you've lived with the enemy for months, when you've seen their families, their children, when you understand their motivations, the lines get blurry. Sarah felt a chill at the implications. You think one of your teammates was turned? I think one of my teammates might have decided that our government wasn't worth dying for, Rivera said. And now they're using everything they learned in Blackwater to settle scores. The radio crackled to life, interrupting the conversation. Colonel Martinez, this is Perimeter Team Alpha. We've got movement on the North Ridge. Single individual appears to be armed. Martinez grabbed the radio. Can you identify? Negative, sir. Too far out. But they're moving with purpose, like they know exactly where they're going. Rivera was already moving, despite her injuries. That's them, she said, reaching for her torn uniform shirt. They're coming for me. You don't know that, Williams protested. Yes, I do. Rivera's voice was filled with certainty and something that might have been sadness. Because if I were hunting the last Blackwater survivor, this is exactly how I'd do it. Create a situation that forces them out of hiding, then move in when they're vulnerable. Sarah watched Rivera struggle with her torn clothing, then made a decision. Here, she said, handing Rivera a clean military shirt from the medical supplies. You'll need to move, won't you? Rivera looked at her with surprise. You believe me? I've been watching you for the past hour, Sarah replied. You move like someone who's been in combat. You think like someone who's been trained in strategy. And you have scars that tell stories of missions that aren't in any official record. Martinez was coordinating with his security teams, but Sarah could see the doubt in his eyes. He was torn between believing Rivera's story and protecting his base from a potential threat. Rivera pulled on the clean shirt, wincing as the movement aggravated her injuries. Colonel, you need to evacuate this position. If I'm right about who's out there, your standard security measures won't be enough. I'm not abandoning my post based on the word of someone who won't even give us her real name until an hour ago, Martinez replied firmly. Then you're going to get your people killed, Rivera said bluntly. The person on that ridge has been trained to take down entire enemy encampments with minimal resources. They know your weaknesses before you do. The radio crackled again. Colonel, the individual on the ridge just disappeared. We lost visual. Rivera closed her eyes. They're inside your perimeter now. Sarah felt her heart rate spike. How is that possible? Because they know exactly how SEAL teams think, how they position themselves, how they respond to threats, Rivera replied. They were trained by the same people. Williams was already moving, checking his weapon and signaling to his team. How do we stop someone like that? Rivera looked at him with eyes that had seen too much. You don't stop them. You survive them, and you pray there's still enough of who they used to be reasoned with. Outside the tent, an alarm began to sound. The base went into lockdown within minutes of the woman's revelation. Sarah watched through the tent flap as soldiers moved with urgent purpose, securing perimeters and checking communications equipment. The mysterious coin had changed everything, transforming a simple medical evacuation into a potential counterintelligence operation. Colonel Martinez paced the small space, his radio crackling with reports from security teams. Nothing, he muttered after another check-in. No unauthorized personnel, no breach of the perimeter, no suspicious communications. The woman sat quietly on the examination table, watching the activity with those sharp eyes. Sarah noticed she seemed less tense now, as if revealing the coin had lifted some invisible burden from her shoulders. You're not surprised by any of this, Sarah observed, continuing to tend to the woman's injuries. No, the woman admitted. I've been expecting something like this for a while now. Sergeant Williams looked up from where he'd been studying tactical maps with his team. Expecting it? You knew this was going to happen? Not specifically this, the woman replied. But I knew someone was hunting survivors from Operation Blackwater. The tent fell silent. Sarah had never heard of Operation Blackwater, but the soldiers' reactions told her it was significant. That operation is classified beyond top secret, Martinez said slowly. How do you know that name? The woman met his gaze steadily. Because I was there. Williams dropped the map he'd been holding. That's impossible. Everyone from Blackwater is either dead or what? The woman asked quietly. Or they were reassigned to deep cover positions so classified that their own families think they're dead. Williams finished, his voice barely above a whisper. Sarah felt the pieces of the puzzle clicking into place. You're not hiding because you're a deserter or a criminal. You're hiding because you're supposed to be dead. The woman nodded slowly. My name is Lieutenant Commander Alex Rivera. I was KIA in Syria 3 years ago, according to official records. The weight of that statement settled over the tent like a heavy blanket. Sarah had heard rumors of such operations, soldiers who disappeared into the shadows to do work so dangerous and classified that the government couldn't acknowledge their existence. The question is, Rivera continued, how did someone get hold of Blackwater Challenge coins? There were only 12 of us, and according to official records, we're all dead. Martinez was studying the coin again, turning it over in his hands. Could someone have found them at the battle site? No, Rivera said firmly. We destroyed everything before the extraction. These coins were distributed after the mission, during debriefing. Anyone who has one was in that debriefing room. Williams's face was grim, which means either someone from your unit survived and went rogue, or someone very high up in the command structure is playing both sides, Rivera finished. Sarah found herself drawn into the mystery despite herself. How many people would have known about the coins? The 12 team members, the mission commander, the intelligence liaison, and maybe 3 people in Washington, Rivera replied. That's it. And how many of the team members are really dead? Sarah asked. Rivera was quiet for a long moment. 6 confirmed KIA during the mission. 3 more died in the extraction. That leaves 3 of us who made it out. Including you, Martinez said. Including me. Williams leaned forward. Do you know where the other 2 are? Rivera shook her head. That's the point of deep cover. We don't know about each other. Safer that way. But Sarah caught something in her expression, a flicker of uncertainty. You do know something, she said. Rivera looked at her and Sarah saw the internal struggle playing out. These were secrets that had been kept for years, truths that could get people killed. 2 months ago, Rivera said finally, I got a message, a single word sent through channels I thought only one other person knew about. It said compromised, meaning someone was hunting Blackwater survivors, meaning it wasn't safe to stay hidden anymore. Martinez set the coin down on the medical tray with a metallic clink. And you think today's attack was connected? I know it was. The timing, the location, the precision of the intelligence required to set up your team, it has all the hallmarks of someone with Blackwater training. Williams studied her face. You think one of your teammates went rogue? I think one of my teammates might not have had a choice, Rivera replied quietly. Sarah finished cleaning the last of Rivera's wounds, her mind racing. What do you mean? Blackwater was a deep penetration mission. We spent 8 months undercover with terrorist cells gathering intelligence. It changes you, that kind of work. Some people come back different. Different how? Martinez asked. Rivera was quiet for a moment, staring at her hands. You start to question which side you're really on. When you've lived with the enemy for months, when you've seen their families, their children, when you understand their motivations, the lines get blurry. Sarah felt a chill at the implications. You think one of your teammates was turned? I think one of my teammates might have decided that our government wasn't worth dying for, Rivera said. And now they're using everything they learned in Blackwater to settle scores. The radio crackled to life, interrupting the conversation. Colonel Martinez, this is Perimeter Team Alpha. We've got movement on the North Ridge. Single individual appears to be armed. Martinez grabbed the radio. Can you identify? Negative, sir. Too far out. But they're moving with purpose, like they know exactly where they're going. Rivera was already moving, despite her injuries. That's them, she said, reaching for her torn uniform shirt. They're coming for me. You don't know that, Williams protested. Yes, I do. Rivera's voice was filled with certainty and something that might have been sadness. Because if I were hunting the last Blackwater survivor, this is exactly how I'd do it. Create a situation that forces them out of hiding, then move in when they're vulnerable. Sarah watched Rivera struggle with her torn clothing, then made a decision. Here, she said, handing Rivera a clean military shirt from the medical supplies. You'll need to move, won't you? Rivera looked at her with surprise. You believe me? I've been watching you for the past hour, Sarah replied. You move like someone who's been in combat. You think like someone who's been trained in strategy. And you have scars that tell stories of missions that aren't in any official record. Martinez was coordinating with his security teams, but Sarah could see the doubt in his eyes. He was torn between believing Rivera's story and protecting his base from a potential threat. Rivera pulled on the clean shirt, wincing as the movement aggravated her injuries. Colonel, you need to evacuate this position. If I'm right about who's out there, your standard security measures won't be enough. I'm not abandoning my post based on the word of someone who won't even give us her real name until an hour ago, Martinez replied firmly. Then you're going to get your people killed, Rivera said bluntly. The person on that ridge has been trained to take down entire enemy encampments with minimal resources. They know your weaknesses before you do. The radio crackled again. Colonel, the individual on the ridge just disappeared. We lost visual. Rivera closed her eyes. They're inside your perimeter now. Sarah felt her heart rate spike. How is that possible? Because they know exactly how SEAL teams think. How they position themselves, how they respond to threats, Rivera replied. They were trained by the same people. Williams was already moving, checking his weapon and signaling to his team. How do we stop someone like that? Rivera looked at him with eyes that had seen too much. You don't stop them. You survive them, and you pray there's still enough of who they used to be reasoned with. Outside the tent, an alarm began to sound. Sarah pressed herself against the tent wall, trying to see through the gap in the fabric without exposing herself. Rivera had stepped into the open area between the medical tent and the main compound, her movements careful but confident despite her injuries. The emergency lighting cast long shadows across the ground, creating a surreal landscape of light and darkness. Hello, Marcus, Rivera called out to the shadows. It's been a long time. A figure emerged from behind one of the supply buildings, moving with the same fluid grace that Rivera possessed. Even in the dim light, Sarah could see he was tall and lean, dressed in dark tactical gear that seemed to absorb what little light there was. His face was hidden by night vision goggles, but his posture suggested someone completely at ease despite being surrounded by armed soldiers. 3 years. 2 months and 16 days, Marcus replied, his voice carrying easily across the space between them. Not that I've been counting. Sarah heard Colonel Martinez shift beside her, probably calculating angles and distances. But Williams caught his arm, reminding him of Rivera's request not to interfere. You look good, Alex, Marcus continued, pulling off his night vision goggles to reveal a face that was younger than Sarah had expected. He couldn't be more than 30, with dark hair and eyes that seemed to catch and reflect the emergency lighting. Civilian life agrees with you. I'm not sure I'd call it civilian, Rivera replied. More like alternative service. Marcus laughed, and the sound was genuinely warm. It wasn't the laugh of someone who had come here to kill. Still diplomatic. I always liked that about you. Sarah found herself studying the interaction with fascination. These two people were talking like old friends meeting for coffee, not like enemies facing off in a military compound. But there was an undercurrent of tension, a careful politeness that suggested they were both very aware of how dangerous the other could be. What are you doing here, Marcus? Rivera asked. Last I heard you were supposed to be dead. Same thing you're doing, Marcus replied. Staying alive, staying hidden, trying to figure out who to trust. He moved closer, and Sarah noticed that despite his casual demeanor, his hands remained clearly visible and away from any weapons. Until 2 weeks ago when everything changed. Changed how? Marcus reached into his tactical vest slowly, making sure Rivera could see every movement. He pulled out what looked like a photograph and held it up. Because someone sent me this. Even from her hidden position, Sarah could see it was a surveillance photo of Rivera walking down a street. The quality was professional, the kind of image that required serious resources to obtain. Someone knows where you are, Alex, Marcus said quietly. Someone knows where all of us are. Rivera's posture shifted almost imperceptibly, and Sarah saw her weight move to the balls of her feet. Not aggressive, but ready. Who? That's what I'm here to find out, Marcus replied. Because whoever it is, they're not content to just watch anymore. He pulled out another photo, this one showing a different person. Jake Morrison. Remember him? Of course. Demolitions expert. Died in the extraction? No, he didn't. Marcus's voice was grim. He's been living in Oregon under the name David Chen. Married, 2 kids, job at a tech company. Was, Rivera corrected, picking up on his use of past tense. House fire last week. Whole family dead. Made to look like an accident, but the burn patterns were wrong. Someone wanted it to look accidental, but didn't care if we figured out it wasn't. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. This wasn't just about Rivera anymore. Someone was systematically hunting down the survivors of Operation Blackwater. How many others? Rivera asked. That I know of? Jake makes 3. There were 6 of us who made it out alive, Alex. Now there are 3. Rivera was quiet for a long moment. Do you know who's doing this? I have suspicions, Marcus replied. But that's why I need your help. You always were better at putting pieces together than the rest of us. Sarah watched Rivera process this information. The woman who had been so guarded, so careful with every word, was now faced with evidence that her worst fears were coming true. The challenge coin, Rivera said, at the explosion site. That was from you, Marcus nodded. I've been tracking the hunting pattern. This base was going to be hit anyway. I just made sure it happened in a way that would draw you out safely. Safely? Colonel Martinez's voice carried from the tent, tight with controlled anger. Marcus turned toward the tent, acknowledging the listeners for the first time. Colonel Martinez, I presume. Your reputation precedes you. And yes, safely. Your men are alive, your base is intact, and nobody got hurt except Alex. Which wasn't part of the plan. You staged a terrorist attack on a military installation, Martinez called back. I prevented a terrorist attack on a military installation, Marcus corrected. The real attack was scheduled for tomorrow, during your morning briefing when all your senior staff would be in one room. Someone wanted a lot of dead officers. Sarah saw Rivera's hands clench into fists. You're saying someone is using our deaths as cover for larger operations? I'm saying someone is cleaning house and we're just the first phase, Marcus replied. Think about it, Alex. Who benefits from eliminating everyone who knew about Blackwater? Rivera was quiet for a moment and Sarah could practically see her mind working through the implications. Someone who was part of the operation but wasn't supposed to survive it. Or someone who authorized the operation but doesn't want anyone around who can testify about what really happened. Marcus added. Williams shifted beside Sarah, and she saw him exchange glances with Martinez. This was bigger than a rogue operative or a personal vendetta. This was about covering up something that went to the highest levels of military intelligence. What do you need from me? Rivera asked. Marcus smiled, and for the first time it looked genuinely relieved. I need you to remember, you were the intelligence liaison, Alex. You had access to files the rest of us never saw. You knew who gave the orders, who signed off on the mission parameters, who authorized the cover story. Those files were classified beyond my clearance level, Rivera protested. But you saw them anyway, Marcus pressed. You always did. You had a talent for finding information that officially didn't exist. Rivera glanced back toward the tent, toward Sarah and the others who were listening to every word. Marcus, there are civilians here. Military personnel who aren't cleared for this information. There are no civilians when it comes to Blackwater, Marcus replied grimly. Not anymore. Whoever's doing this has escalated beyond targeting just us. They're willing to kill innocent people to maintain their cover. Sarah felt the weight of that statement. Whatever secrets Rivera and Marcus carried, they were the kind that people died for. The kind that could reshape everything they thought they knew about their own government. How do I know you're not the one doing this? Rivera asked quietly. How do I know this isn't all an elaborate setup? Marcus was quiet for a moment, then reached into his vest again. This time he pulled out something that made Rivera gasp audibly. It was a small, worn photograph of a group of soldiers in desert camouflage standing in front of a helicopter. Because, Marcus said softly, I still carry this picture of all of us, and I still remember the promise we made to each other. No one gets left behind. Sarah saw Rivera's shoulders sag slightly as if some invisible weight had settled on them. Even if it means bringing the fight to innocent people? Especially then, Marcus replied. Because if we don't stop this here, if we don't figure out who's behind this and why, then everyone we've ever cared about becomes a target. The compound was silent except for the distant hum of generators. Sarah realized she was holding her breath, waiting for Rivera's decision. Whatever choice she made in the next few moments would determine whether they were allies or enemies, whether this ended in conversation or violence. Rivera looked back at the tent one more time, her eyes finding Sarah's through the gap in the fabric. In that moment, Sarah saw not the composed special operations soldier, but a woman who was tired of carrying secrets, tired of running, tired of watching the people around her pay the price for choices she'd made years ago. All right, Marcus, Rivera said finally. Let's talk. The conference room in the base's command center felt smaller with Marcus present. He sat across from Rivera at the metal table, while Colonel Martinez, Sergeant Williams, and Sarah occupied chairs along the walls. The emergency lighting cast harsh shadows on everyone's faces, making the conversation feel like something from a spy thriller rather than a military briefing. Before we begin, Rivera said, her voice steady but tired, I want everyone to understand what they're getting into. What Marcus and I are about to discuss is classified at levels that don't officially exist. Once you hear it, you become part of it. There's no going back. Sarah felt her heart racing but nodded along with the others. She'd already crossed too many lines to turn back now. Marcus pulled out a tablet that had somehow survived the EMP pulse, protected by military-grade shielding. Operation Blackwater wasn't what we were told it was, he began, activating the device. We thought we were infiltrating terrorist cells to gather intelligence on planned attacks against American interests. But you weren't, Martinez said. It wasn't a question. We were, Rivera corrected. But that was only part of it. We were also being used to identify and eliminate people within our own intelligence community. The room fell silent. Sarah felt like the temperature had dropped 10 degrees. Marcus pulled up files on his tablet, showing photographs and documents. The terrorists we infiltrated weren't planning attacks on American soil. They were planning to expose American agents who had been selling intelligence to foreign governments. Double agents, Williams said quietly. Triple agents, Rivera corrected. People who were playing so many sides that even they had lost track of their original loyalties. Marcus turned the tablet so everyone could see an organizational chart showing connections between various intelligence agencies, government officials, and international contacts. The Blackwater team was sent in to eliminate the terrorists before they could reveal the extent of the corruption. But something went wrong, Sarah said. Beginning to understand. Everything went wrong, Rivera replied, because we discovered that the corruption went higher than anyone imagined. We weren't just eliminating terrorists. We were eliminating witnesses to crimes committed by people in our own government. Marcus pulled up another file, this one showing financial records. Someone in the Pentagon had been selling intelligence about American operations to the highest bidder for over 2 years. They used the money to fund black operations that Congress never authorized. Illegal wars, Martinez said grimly. Worse than illegal, Rivera said. Operations designed to destabilize regions so that certain American companies could profit from the chaos. Arms dealers, private military contractors, oil companies, they all benefited from conflicts that our own people were secretly prolonging. Sarah felt sick to her stomach. And you found evidence of this? We found evidence, witnesses, financial records, communication intercepts. Everything needed to bring down a network that reached into the highest levels of military and civilian leadership, Marcus said. Williams leaned forward. So what happened to it? Rivera and Marcus exchanged a look that spoke of shared trauma. The extraction was compromised, Rivera said quietly. Someone on our own side gave our position to enemy forces. Half our team died fighting their way out, and the other half supposedly died when our helicopter was shot down. But you survived, Martinez said. We survived because we weren't on that helicopter, Marcus explained. Rivera and I and 3 others were still at the extraction point, uploading the last of the evidence to a secure server. We heard the helicopter go down and knew we were on our own. What happened to the evidence? Sarah asked. Rivera pulled out her own tablet, smaller and more sophisticated than Marcus's. I kept copies, hidden in servers around the world, encrypted and fragmented. I've been sitting on enough evidence to bring down dozens of high-ranking officials for 3 years. Why haven't you used it? Martinez demanded. Because the moment I surface with that evidence, everyone I've ever cared about becomes a target, Rivera replied. My family, my friends, anyone who's ever helped me, they all die. Marcus nodded grimly. And now someone's forcing our hand. They're killing us off one by one, probably hoping to find the evidence before we can use it. Sarah was trying to process the enormity of what she was hearing. Who's behind the hunting? That's what we need to figure out, Rivera said. But it has to be someone with access to our real identities, our new locations, our cover stories. Someone inside the intelligence community. Williams had been quiet during most of the conversation, but now he spoke up. Someone who was part of the original operation. Both Rivera and Marcus turned to look at him. Think about it, Williams continued. Who else would have access to all that information? Who else would know your protocols, your safe houses, your emergency contacts? The mission commander, Rivera said slowly. General Patricia Hayes. Marcus pulled up another file on his tablet showing a military personnel record. Hayes was promoted to Deputy Director of Defense Intelligence after Blackwater. She's now one of the most powerful people in military intelligence. She'd have the resources to hunt you down, Martinez observed. And the motivation, Rivera added. If the evidence we collected implicates her in the corruption network, she'd do anything to keep it buried. Sarah felt the pieces clicking into place. But why now? Why wait 3 years? Marcus turned to a news article on his tablet. Because someone's been investigating the financial irregularities from that period. A congressional committee has been asking questions about unauthorized expenditures in military intelligence. They're getting close to the truth, Rivera said. Hayes needs to eliminate any witnesses before the investigation reaches her. Williams checked his watch. How long do we have? Not long, Marcus replied. I've been tracking the pattern of eliminations. They're accelerating. Hayes is running out of time, which makes her more dangerous. Rivera stood up, testing her injured ankle. We need to go public with the evidence. It's the only way to stop her. That's suicide, Martinez protested. The moment you surface, you'll have half the intelligence community hunting you. They're already hunting us, Marcus pointed out. At least this way we go down fighting. Sarah had been quiet, thinking through everything she'd heard. Now she spoke up. What if there's another way? Everyone turned to look at her. You said the evidence is hidden in servers around the world, Sarah continued. What if you could release it anonymously? Set up some kind of dead man switch so that if anything happens to you, the evidence automatically goes public? Rivera and Marcus exchanged glances. That could work, Rivera said slowly, but we'd need help. Marcus added, technical expertise, secure communications, protection while we set it up. Colonel Martinez was quiet for a moment, then stood up. You'll have it, everyone stared at him, Williams asked. These people risked their lives serving their country, Martinez said firmly. If what they're saying is true, if our own government betrayed them and is now trying to silence them, then we have a duty to help them get the truth out. Sarah felt a surge of admiration for the colonel's decision. It would probably end his career, but he was choosing to do what was right. Thank you, Rivera said quietly. Marcus was already working on his tablet. I can have the technical setup ready in 6 hours, but we'll need to move fast once we start. Hayes will know we're making our move. Then we'd better get started, Rivera said, because if we're right about the timeline, we may not have 6 hours. As if summoned by her words, the base's communication system crackled to life for the first time since the attack. But instead of the usual military chatter, a single voice came through the speakers. Lieutenant Commander Rivera, I know you're listening. You have something that belongs to me and I want it back. The voice was calm, professional, and unmistakably female. Sarah felt her blood run cold as she recognized the tone of absolute authority. General Hayes, Rivera said quietly. Hello, Alex. It's time we had a talk. The communication system fell silent after General Hayes's words, leaving the command center in tense quiet. Sarah watched Rivera's face transform from surprise to grim determination, while Marcus was already moving toward the equipment, checking for traces of how Hayes had accessed their supposedly secure communications. She's close, Marcus said quietly, examining the communication console. This signal came through local relays, not satellite, maybe within 10 miles. Colonel Martinez was coordinating with his remaining functional security teams through hand signals, but Sarah could see the strain on his face. His base had been compromised at levels he'd never imagined possible. Rivera moved to the center of the room, speaking clearly toward the communication system. I'm here, General. What do you want? The response came immediately, as if Hayes had been waiting. I want what you stole from Syria, Alex. The files, the evidence, all of it. You've had 3 years to disappear. That's more than most traitors get. Traitors? Rivera's voice was controlled, but Sarah could hear the anger beneath. We were following orders. Your orders. You were following the mission parameters until you decided to play judge and jury, Hayes replied. Those files you copied were classified above your clearance level. Taking them was theft of government property. Marcus looked up from his equipment. She's stalling, trying to keep us talking while she moves into position. Williams was monitoring the perimeter through the few remaining security cameras. I've got movement on multiple fronts. Looks like professional operators, not regular military. Private contractors, Rivera said grimly. Hayes has been using them for the eliminations. Easier to deny involvement. The radio crackled again. Alex, you know how this ends. You can't run forever, and you can't hide behind civilians indefinitely. Surrender the evidence, and I guarantee safe passage for everyone currently in that base. Sarah felt her stomach clench. Hayes was treating them all as collateral damage in her war with Rivera. What guarantee? Rivera called back. Like the guarantee you gave the Blackwater team during extraction? There was a pause before Hayes responded. That was regrettable but necessary. You found evidence of operations that were vital to national security. Some secrets are worth protecting at any cost. Including murder? Marcus asked loudly. Including whatever it takes to preserve the integrity of American intelligence operations, Hayes replied coldly. Do you have any idea how many lives your evidence could cost if it became public? How many ongoing operations would be compromised? Rivera looked at Sarah, then at the others in the room. Sarah could see her weighing the costs, considering whether Hayes might be right about the consequences of exposure. You're talking about illegal operations, Rivera said finally. Arms dealing, unauthorized wars, profiteering from conflict. Those operations should be compromised. You're naive, Alex. You always were. The world isn't black and white. Sometimes, we have to work in gray areas to protect American interests. Sarah stepped forward, surprising herself with her boldness. General Hayes, this is Dr. Sarah Chen. I'm a civilian medic, and I've heard everything. Are you really saying that murder and corruption are acceptable in the name of national security? The pause was longer this time. When Hayes spoke again, her voice had lost some of its professional calm. Doctor, you're in a situation you don't understand. I suggest you remove yourself before you become part of the problem. Too late for that, Sarah replied. The moment your people staged that attack to draw Rivera out, you made everyone here part of your problem. Marcus had finished his examination of the communications equipment. Alex, we need to move. She's triangulating our position through the comm system. I'd say we have maybe 15 minutes before they breach the perimeter. Colonel Martinez stepped forward. General Hayes, this is Colonel Diego Martinez, commanding officer of this installation. I'm ordering you to withdraw your forces immediately. This is a lawful military base under proper command. Hayes's laugh was cold. Colonel, you're harboring fugitives who possess stolen classified material. Your base is no longer under proper command. It's a security risk that needs to be contained. By whose authority? Martinez demanded. By mine. As of 20 minutes ago, I have authorization from the Joint Chiefs to recover the stolen intelligence by any means necessary. Sarah felt the walls closing in. Hayes had somehow managed to legitimize her assault on the base, at least on paper. Rivera was working frantically on her tablet, her fingers flying over the interface. Marcus, how's your dead man switch protocol? Ready? To deploy. But I need another few minutes to set up the global distribution. We don't have a few minutes, Williams reported from his position at the security monitors. I count at least 20 operators moving in from all directions. Rivera looked up from her tablet, her face resolute. Then we do this the hard way. She turned toward the communication system. General, I'm uploading the evidence to multiple news outlets and government oversight committees as we speak. You have approximately 30 seconds to call off your attack before the whole world knows what Operation Blackwater really was. The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. Then Hayes's voice came back, no longer calm or professional. Alex, if you release that evidence, you'll destroy more than just my career. You'll expose operations that are still active, agents who are still in the field, sources who will be killed the moment their governments identify them. Rivera's hands paused over her tablet. You're lying. Am I? Check file designation Phoenix Protocol in your stolen archives. See how many active operations are linked to the Blackwater financial network. See how many lives you'll be ending with your righteousness. Sarah watched Rivera's face go pale as she accessed the file. Marcus moved closer to read over her shoulder, and Sarah saw his expression change as well. Phoenix, Rivera whispered. And Sarah remembered that was the code word Rivera had given them, the signal that meant everything had gone wrong. What is it? Martinez asked. Marcus answered grimly. Phoenix Protocol was the contingency plan if Blackwater was ever exposed. It links to 17 active operations in 12 countries. If this evidence goes public, dozens of undercover agents die, Rivera finished. Along with their local contacts, their families, anyone who helped them. Hayes's voice came through the speakers, now gentle, almost maternal. You see, Alex, you've always been too good a soldier to sacrifice innocent lives for your principles. Call off the upload. Let's end this quietly. Sarah watched Rivera struggle with the decision. The woman who had been so determined to expose the truth was now faced with the knowledge that doing so would cost innocent lives. There has to be another way. Sarah said quietly. Rivera looked at her with eyes full of pain. Is there? How do you expose corruption without destroying the innocent people caught up in it? Marcus was studying his tablet intently. Wait. Alex, look at this. The Phoenix files have been modified. Recently. Rivera turned to look at his screen. What do you mean? The operational links have been added in the last 6 months. These operations weren't originally connected to Blackwater at all. The realization hit them simultaneously. She's been seeding the evidence, Rivera said, making it impossible to expose the original corruption without destroying current operations. An insurance policy, Marcus added. Guarantee that we could never use the evidence without becoming murderers ourselves. Hayes's voice came through the speakers again, but now there was uncertainty in it. Alex, you're running out of time. Make your choice. Rivera looked around the room at the faces of the people who had risked everything to help her. Sarah, who had chosen to stay and treat wounded soldiers rather than flee to safety. Martinez, who had put his career on the line to protect people he'd just met. Williams and his team, who had trusted her story and stood ready to fight alongside her. I've made my choice, Rivera said, her voice strong and clear. She turned back to her tablet and began typing rapidly. Marcus, can you separate the original Blackwater evidence from the Phoenix editions? Give me 2 minutes. You have it. Rivera turned toward the communication system. General, you made one mistake. You assumed I was still the same soldier who followed orders without question. But 3 years of living with the consequences of my actions has taught me something important. What's that, Alex? Sometimes the only way to serve your country is to disobey the people who claim to represent it. Rivera's fingers flew over her tablet as Marcus worked alongside her, isolating the original evidence from Hayes's additions. Sarah found herself holding her breath as the seconds ticked by. Upload complete, Marcus announced. Original Blackwater evidence is now public. Phoenix operations are protected. The base's communication system erupted with activity as news alerts began flooding in. Within minutes, Sarah could see headlines appearing on Marcus's tablet. Pentagon corruption scandal exposed. Illegal arms deals linked to defense officials. Whistleblower reveals military intelligence conspiracy. Hayes's voice came through, the speakers one last time, barely controlled rage replacing her earlier calm. You have no idea what you've done. Rivera looked directly at the camera she knew was transmitting to Hayes. I've done what I should have done 3 years ago. I've told the truth. The silence that followed was broken by the sound of helicopters in the distance, but these weren't attack helicopters. Sarah could see through the windows that they bore the markings of federal law enforcement. Colonel Martinez was smiling for the first time since this ordeal began. Looks like the cavalry has arrived. As the FBI helicopters touched down outside the base, Sarah realized that Rivera's gamble had worked. By exposing the original corruption while protecting current operations, she had forced Hayes into a position where her only choice was surrender or face charges for everything from murder to treason. Rivera slumped against the table, exhaustion finally overtaking adrenaline. It's over, she said quietly. Sarah moved to check Rivera's injuries, which had been neglected during the crisis. How do you feel? Rivera looked around the room at the people who had stood with her, then at the tablet showing news reports that would reshape American military intelligence. For the first time in 3 years, Rivera said, I feel like I can breathe. Outside, federal agents were taking Hayes's contractors into custody, while others moved to secure the evidence that would finally bring justice for Operation Blackwater. Sarah realized she had witnessed something extraordinary, not just the exposure of a conspiracy, but the triumph of people who chose to do what was right even when it meant risking everything they had. The silence was no longer one of fear or secrets. It was the silence of peace, of justice finally served, and of good people who had found the courage to stand up for the truth.